Perfect. So yes, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from today. Thank you very much for joining another WBM Technologies webinar on modern deployment. We're excited to sit down today and talk hybrid collaboration within the modern workplace and how organizations are embracing this new reality that we're living within. So before we get started, we'll do a quick introduction. Next slide there, Josh. So my name is Dustin Lee. I'm the Strategic Business Development Manager at WBM. With me today is my colleague, Jody Sagan. Jody is our Director of Technology, Experience, and Enablement. And he and his team work closely with our partners to ensure that they're set up for success within today's modern workplace. So we will be the host of the discussion for the next 30 to 40 minutes. But we're excited to introduce two very special guests. Thank you, Peter and Brian, for joining us today. Peter joins us from Vancouver, where he's the North American IT manager for Westport Fuel Systems, a global company that creates clean transportation solutions that meet existing and future emissions regulations and targets. Peter's an active member of the WBM client community and has been nice enough to participate in a number of events over the years. So we're glad to welcome him back for today's webinar. Thanks very much, Peter.
You're welcome.
And then next up is Brian McRae, who's one of our newest members to the client community. Brian is currently working through his vision for creating an exceptional technology experience for him and his team within a new build, a new headquarters in Saskatoon for 320 Modulars. So for those of you that may have missed a Dragon's Den a number of years back, Brian is a co-founder of 320 Modular, a Saskatoon-based company that is redefining the construction experience through a modular building process. With modular construction projects across Western Canada, 320 is an exciting company, and we're proud to have a part of our community. So yeah, thanks for joining, Brian, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, we also have one of our internal subject matter experts on the line, Brandon Neufeld. He and his team have been working on our managed meeting room solution and have been working at perfecting how we deliver that service to our client community. So he's here as well and can answer any questions that come up through our discussion. So with that, I'll hand it back to Jody, who will speak a little bit about WBM, our managed solutions, before we get into the panel discussion today.
Thank you, Dustin. All right, so a little bit about WBM. Our organization has been around since 1950. So what we sold then is a little bit different than what we do now. I think back then there was some adders and typewriters. But what's emerged over that amount of time is one of Canada's best IT service providers. So we have humble roots growing out of Western Canada, but what we are now is a team of over 470 IT professionals with operations in Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Vancouver. So what do we do? WBM provides world-class technology solutions to a customer community that includes both public sector as well as private sector. And of course, that includes many of Western Canada's most progressive IT organizations. So we're happy to speak to you about one of these technology solutions from our end user computing practice, as well as our data and security practice, which makes up one of the elements of the enterprise user experience platform that you see there on your screen. That is patent pending. All right. So when we talk about collaboration spaces, we're really talking about an experience. So that's the experience of an executive admin who's trying to get everything ready before a big meeting. That's the experience of just simply joining a meeting in one of these spaces and everything works. The microphones work, the speakers work, everything is as it should be, and you can hear each other. The experience of sharing content and not having to ask everybody if you can see what it is that you're sharing, and experience of remote participants who maybe can't be in the room because of this hybrid reality, but they still feel included and that they're a part of the discussion that's taking place. So in that experience, that's where the technology, it kind of becomes invisible. and instead allows for the collaboration, for the productivity and connection to all of the members of the team. And that's where we can get that 86 plus net promoter score as feedback from our client community by enabling that experience. So it's our managed model that brings a customized solution to your existing infrastructure that offers live, remote, and on-demand training, and it wraps it all up in an award-winning support model that ensures all of your team is empowered with an experience that really can only be understood by feeling the difference that a managed meeting room experience makes. So we have our very first poll question here. I'm going to get to Josh to bring it up, but it says, which statement best summarizes your staff's current meeting room experience? So I think we've got 4 options there. So if you don't mind just filling that out for us, we'd love to know what your current collaboration and meeting room experience is like. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to submit, but I did anyway. Okay. So I can see here that most folks are saying that our meeting room experience is okay. So that's really good, but there's still room for improvement. I will admit that is also the one that I filled out. There's always a little bit of room for improvement. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Hopefully you get a chance to see some new and innovative things today. And thank you for moving on to the next screen there, Josh. All right. So as you can imagine, WBM does work with an expansive industry-leading partners to deliver best-in-class technology. But as we'll discuss, technology is only a part of the solution. WBM's managed solution will ensure a seamless collaboration experience, and it'll maximize uptime for you and your organization. So what we really want to show is that this is no longer a traditional AV provider solution. Yes, we're using best-in-class technology and technology standards. Standards means that now we can manage an entire fleet of endpoints that are empowering collaboration across the organization. And having it managed means that you have some peace of mind that the technology is working properly, it gets out of the way, and that you can collaborate worry-free. And then we can talk a little bit about support as well. So of course, our managed meeting room offering means that you are fully backed with that world-class support organization who are monitoring your systems, and they're definitely ready to come on site to help out when there is an issue. But we also have some non-traditional support mechanisms as well. So when you're having a meeting, it just doesn't work when you have to wait for a support provider to drive all the way to your office to help fix things up, or to even have your local IT come down from whatever they're doing just to help out with the meeting. By that time, the meeting is either over or it might as well be. So enter a unique support mechanism, which is the power bar. That power bar is there for you when something goes wrong, but it's available in real time. So you can simply scan a QR code that would be in that collaboration space. And now what happens is you're talking to a real person right then and there who can actually help you troubleshoot that problem. But they're also there to enable you. That means that they can give you some tips and features and making your presentation more dynamic. Maybe they give you guidance on how to use something like Speaker Coach and PowerPoint to hone your own speaking ability, ensure you're using inclusive language and not using filler words such as or you know. I did this, and apparently I use you know a lot more than I should. Or maybe you just want to test the meeting in advance, make sure that everything's working as it should. Absolutely, you can use the power bar for that. It's all giving you just a little extra confidence before going into your next big meeting. Oh, I think you're on mute, Josh.
Next slide's up there for you.
Dustin is muted.
Yeah, Dustin's muted. Thank you, Ryan.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jody. So as we do with all of our solutions, we've really looked at how we can establish a best-in-class process and customize our discovery process as well to address all of the needs of our client community. And so we've used our award-winning discovery process to identify different employer user groups to design a customized solution that drives enablement, collaboration, support, and productivity. We really view meeting rooms as a collaborative space that accommodates hybrid work without limiting the potential of traditional AV solutions or ignoring the investments that you've made previously. We want to incorporate what you have today and where you want to go tomorrow and find the best way of getting there. These meeting rooms exist in a complex environment of evolving technology and changing users. And by utilizing WBM's industry-leading managed services program, you can ensure a consistent and reliable collaboration space for you and your organization. All right, and that brings us to our second poll of the day, which is how important is how important is meeting collaboration to your organization? A, not important at all. B, it is important, but only for some meetings. C, we want all meetings to be collaborative so we can work more productively, during meetings. I will choose the one that I can't pronounce. There we go. So we've got about 2/3, 1/3. Importance depending on the organization, either in some meetings or in all. So yeah, great to get that feedback. Thanks everybody for participating. So with that, we are going to get into our panel discussion. And thanks again to Peter and Brian for starting us off here. As this is a panel discussion format, we want to encourage questions from the audience as well. So we've got a few questions we're going to walk through with Peter and Brian first to get us started. And then certainly if you have questions, you can post them in the chat for the meeting. Or you can raise your hand and Josh will unmute you and you can ask a question to them as well. So we've all went through a lot of change over the last few years, and certainly the way we communicate within organizations has changed a lot. I can remember not too many years ago that the code to my teleconference line was a very important part of my day-to-day, and that seems like a long time away, but it was only a few years ago. And so I want to start off by asking both of you how your organizations have taken on that change. What have you guys noticed as the biggest change as we've moved to this new hybrid reality? And maybe I'll start with you, Peter, and you can tell us a little bit about what you've seen.
Sure. Well, so let's talk in the pre-COVID and post-COVID. So pre-COVID, our company globally had 0 audiovisual meetings. Any meetings we had globally were either through Skype phone calls with no video, and that was pretty much the standard. When COVID hit and we rolled out Teams, this is when we took on the whole meeting rooms thing. So our goal is to get more audio visual, and it's been a bit of a challenge culturally, especially in Europe, but in Canada, in North America, it's been embraced fully.
So can you expand on what have some of those challenges been with some of the other organizations?
So I think a lot of it's cultural. Okay. So first of all, we never had audio visual before. So when we have meetings now, for example, in IT, a global IT group, the only ones ever on camera are those of us in Canada. And it's pretty consistent, like 100%. So it's really literally a cultural thing. I'm not sure how to break that barrier yet. I know that when we have meetings with the executive and people and them, they're always on camera. So it's got to trickle down, right? So it's just a matter of timing and change. So
yeah, for sure. Well, we can all remember those first few days of like 8 to 10 hours of video meetings, and you felt like 20 times more drained than a regular day in the office. So there is Absolutely. It takes us a little while to adapt for sure.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that, Peter. Brian, what have you seen in your business? What changes, both positive and negative, have you guys had to make?
I think for us, we were a little unique in the sense that, to sort of speak in pre-COVID, post-COVID terms like Peter did, we didn't make any changes or have to make any changes sort of when COVID became a thing. It was quite simple for us to sort of move to remote sort of environments, and we were still connected a lot with our field teams. But I think what's been interesting for us is that we have had the luxury of going through this pandemic and seeing sort of the evolution of integrating the AV experience into the workforce. And we're undergoing a really cool experience to be currently designing a new space that fortunately can integrate all of those things that we now know are important. Because some of those things, and Peter will probably know this, it's really kind of hard to retrofit some of the technology, and it's totally doable. But when we're starting with a blank slate, it's a pretty fun experience to be able to take what we've learned over the last couple of years and build it into something. And so I think the key priorities, though, is connectivity for us. And it's been more clear that our office staff has always been quite connected, but connectivity to the field is becoming increasingly important, and having sort of meeting capability, collaboration space on a construction site is becoming increasingly important. And so I think that's something that we've learned and are adjusting to. And then the other piece is sort of on the client side is that now that this technology exists, we do a lot of Indigenous work, and instead of a chief and council driving 5 or 6 hours to see us, or me driving 5 or 6 hours to see them, we're deferring to some virtual meetings, which means that we have a new opportunity to really step up our game in terms of how we can present and collaborate virtually with customers as well.
Great. Yeah, it's certainly, you're seeing it's opening up new opportunities for communication, and there's some opportunities to be a bit more efficient in your time as well. So yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing those. And I'll come back to the new build in a second, but because I think there's a really interesting timing there for sure with all these changes that are taking place. But before that, Peter, with your staff having limited staff in the office and many executives kind of spread out globally, how has the meeting rooms as we know them today impacted Westport Fuel Systems? Like, it's really you've got a unique situation that we couldn't have really imagined 5 or 10 years ago that is now your day-to-day reality. How does that look?
Yeah, well, it looks a lot different. So pre-COVID, again, we were actually taking a stab at rolling out our first Teams room, I would call it. And we used our main boardroom in Vancouver as the test case for this. So we did that with internal staff, and it wasn't pretty. I think we did it the week before COVID. It's pretty easy to get a camera up and running. It's pretty easy to get audio, and it's pretty easy to plug in everything and actually. But to actually have it functional and working consistently, that was the part where we struggled, and we didn't have the expertise. Then we go post-COVID, and we rolled out Teams globally within a week, thanks to WBM. Basically, before that, we were using Office 2010, Skype, and then within a week, we rolled out Microsoft Teams globally. And this main boardroom we had was actually functional, but only to a certain extent. So what we did then was we engaged WBM to actually help us outfit our rest of our rooms. So we had like 10 other meeting rooms, which we built out to Teams rooms, and that functionality has been great. Our team doesn't really have the expertise to support and manage this. I could, we're IT guys, so we do what we can, but having that ability to have an expert on the phone or on site to help us with these rooms was really tremendous.
In some ways, that the test pre-COVID couldn't have been at a better time, where you're getting yourself prepared for what the new reality was just around the corner. So
you didn't even know.
And you didn't even know. Yeah, right. Well, and as we've all experienced, the troubleshooting process is a lot different than it used to be. Like, you used to walk into a boardroom, everybody was in the same room, and if you had an AV issue, it was, should we try another HDMI cable or something simple like that? And the environment has certainly changed quite significantly. So to be able to test that out and get prepared for the new reality ahead of time? I'm guessing you guys were up and running, and because of those learnings, it actually helped you with a smoother onboarding when you went full scale.
Yeah, definitely. But still, having that expertise on the team would be great. But if you don't have that, you got to reach out to somebody. So I think that's where the question initiated is. I don't have anybody on my team that knows this stuff. So, we're learning as we go. So
yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a really important point there. And Brian, maybe coming back to you now, so like going from a learning and an experience to and then bringing that technology into a a known workplace to developing a whole new headquarters in Saskatoon, which is really exciting. How do you see, or like, how are you approaching the concept of collaboration spaces as it relates to the new build? Are you looking at it a different way than you would have looked at it, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it goes even like beyond like the technology. It actually goes into even the office design. I think that just use the open office, private office discussion it was always been a pretty hot topic. And I feel like the open office really made a lot of headway over the last 5-6 years. And those are discussions starting from a design perspective. What do we do? And because everybody is on Teams all the time and on video calls, and there's some great technology that helps manage that environment in open office. But so some of the experiences through COVID over the last few years have just impacted, I think, just schematic design and some other pieces of the architecture. So but the technology is becoming like the key component, I think, of our new build. One of the things that makes us different in the construction industry is how we've utilized technology through all parts of our business, really since inception. And it's created a different client experience than typical, than the typical sort of general contracting world. So it's always been a bit of a special thing for us. So our approach to really teching our new office out is really about two things. One is it is certainly about our internal like staff experience and their ability to sort of have seamless sort of collaboration internally and externally. But almost more importantly, it's actually about the customers who are coming in and seeing how we use technology. And a design builder, our vision is also to be able to say like, hey, you see how we're using technology. Here, we can integrate this into your new design. So it becomes actually a bit of a sales tool for us as well. But we're really focused on the client experience. We've got a cool design lounge in a new space, and we're going to have some like overhead cameras. So we can be doing, virtual design consults with people across the country. That's not like us holding up samples and saying like, what do you think of this flooring? It'll be like a super cool framed out sort of design space, that multi-camera experience for design consults and stuff like that. So we're really thinking about how the client experience, both in office when they experience the technology, and then also when they're across the country, getting a presentation or being part of our design build process.
Yeah, I love that, the idea of these bringing those tables to life, kind of with incorporating cameras and kind of recognizing the fact that collaboration doesn't need to have 4 walls around it either. So like the front entrance and the having monitors in if you've been to any of the WBM head offices, you've seen a beautiful screen display that can then be used to showcase KPIs and different dashboards and messages to your clients. So have you incorporated those kind of open spaces as well into the design?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we'll have lots of sort of opportunity for dashboard sort of communication, and it's not like it's really in your face, but it's like, hey, if you're a customer, waiting for a coffee or something, you might be looking at something about, maybe it's our safety stats, maybe it's our Indigenous engagement piece. So almost a bit of a really soft sell, quietly on the walls while customers are waiting for something, or or whatever, walking around and touring and whatnot. So yeah, there's lots of cool opportunities to utilize technology to do a bit of a soft sell, I'll say.
Yeah, well, and a lot of those things you want to celebrate are also great things for your employees to see while they're grabbing a coffee or having lunch as well, so they can remember why they're so proud to work for 320.
I definitely love the people element of it there, right? And I think that, when it comes to technology, there's some complexity and some magic that needs to happen to make it look really easy, right? Brian, you talk about your employees, and it's the next level to make it really easy on your clients who are coming in and be able to provide them with that experience. And so on the technology side, right, there's challenges. We've got to maintain this, we've got to update it, we've got to patch it. And on the other side, we've got to make sure that people understand how to use it. So in this case, like maybe Peter, I'll ask you, like you were an early adopter here. You had already kind of seen the complexity and you decided to move to a managed model. Can you just discuss your thought process around that?
Yeah, I will, and I'll start by giving an example. So pre-COVID, we used to do town halls globally. So we would, for example, have a town hall in Vancouver. All the employees from Vancouver would go down to the big meeting room and we'd record it and we'd save it on our intranet for people in Europe to see. 6 months later, they might have the same town hall, but in Italy, and they would do the same thing. People would dial in through the phone and listen or see the recording after. One of the very first things we did when post-COVID, when we did have Teams, was we wanted to get our Teams event working and replace town halls with virtual town halls. So obviously the technology was new and daunting to us. So we did engage WBM. We had a couple of the hotshots from WBM in behind the scenes doing the production work for us for the first 2 or 3 town halls we did. In these town halls, we would have 300-400 people. We have like 6-7 executives doing different presentations. And the one thing that going through the first town hall, it seemed daunting, but when you watched it, it was like, okay, well, this isn't too bad. So even when the second town hall came along 3 months later, we were still, well, we're not quite really sure. So WBM stepped in and helped us with the production again. And now we're fully on our own. And it's pretty straightforward. The value, though, has been tremendous because, half of our 3/4 of our company is in Europe. So we have GDPR requirements, right? Privacy requirements. So what we do is when we do a town hall, we get the video that we get from Microsoft Teams, we cleanse it from privacy information stuff, and then we send it out to the rest of the company to view. But really the value has been in getting the whole company together in a live event. And so now when we have these live events, it's quite a popular thing now. So in the last 2 years, it's changed a lot. So, and we couldn't have done that without the help, from the guys who know how to use these tools. Even in this session here, this is a Microsoft Live event, and already we've seen tiny little hiccups because it's new technology, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think, yeah, I like how you called out the importance of those engagements. Like they're more important than ever now to bring people together and align on the overall corporate message. So it's important that they go smooth and yeah, interesting to hear how you've been able to kind of streamline and take that content further so that it reaches more people.
Yeah, and what you just said, Dustin, is key. Is if you do these town halls virtually like we did, but if they don't really come off well, or if you have issues, and the executive next time are like, well, that didn't really go that well. Maybe we need a new way to do this. So it was really super important for us to make sure those first 2 or 3 town halls went perfect. And now it's the standard, right? So
for sure. Well, I'm sure others. I've certainly been in my fair share of town halls where the technical side doesn't come through, and it has an impact on the delivery of the leaders. And even though the leaders aren't the technical crew running it, it's certainly you don't realize how big of an impact it has until it starts working the way it should.
Yeah, and then also on that same note, once you've done a bunch of them, you realize that it's actually not that complex, right?
Very true. Yeah. Great. And yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. One kind of a follow-up question to that. Now, as you've got this managed model in place, how important do you see having visibility to what's happening in the rooms being for you going forward? Like the concept of dashboarding to manage those rooms, is that something that's going to be important to how it plays out in your organization?
Yeah, and I think it wasn't that long ago. WBM came to me and said, hey, you know, what is your thoughts on how this works, dashboarding, all that? And I think my response was, the best thing we could have is a proactive approach. You know, first thing in the morning, making sure that all the cameras are functioning, making sure that everything's functioning from the back end, right? And if there are issues, sending one of our techs or one of your techs to site to resolve whatever issue is. And that to me was the biggest value is, and you know, the last thing you want is people going into a meeting room with 5, 6 to 10 people and having issues either with the camera or whatever, right? And that, first of all, that kills your adoption. It does a bunch of negative things. So having that proactive approach to me is really the key, is having somebody in the morning saying, hey, look, yeah, everything's running, everything's functioning perfectly. So that to me was the biggest part of it.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic. And thanks for that, Peter. I think maybe a great opportunity to bring in Brandon, because I know Brandon and his team have been working on evolving our dashboard and making sure that we're bringing the right, you know, the right data to the board. And Brandon, do you mind speaking a little bit to where you guys have been leading, and if you have anything that you can show us or just speak to, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for inviting me in. The dashboarding is obviously critical and important piece of what we're trying to deliver with this service, and having that live visibility to get in and take a look at what is my overall system health. Are there notifications? Are there rooms that are in maintenance that I need to make people aware of at the start of the day to reschedule meetings, or use the other tools available to make sure people are getting to areas where they can work effectively. And so we've spent a lot of time building up and collaborating with the client community and looking at the tools and the information that's available to build out different dashboards of what it's going to be useful for both from an operational perspective, from your support personnel, and from a client facing side as well, to be able to look at that and see, okay, we have 8 healthy rooms here right now. We have 2 that are in maintenance. I can scan this QR code on the corner and get into more detail on any of these stats to drill down and see what's going on there. So is that one in maintenance? Oh, it's okay. We have an update scheduled in there for today. So there's going to be some patching happening in there. Things of that nature, right? So that kind of information is right there at your fingertips from a dashboarding perspective, as well as additional detail on what the work has been happening. So you can see at the bottom line is what I'm excited about is the service is really broken out into proactive and reactive steps. So our reactive steps are when someone on site goes into a room and has an issue and notifies us about it. But there are a lot of proactive tools that we're able to put into place now, between both using Microsoft and third-party tools, whether it's Logitech or Crestron or whatever your hardware environment is. They come with their own set of tools too, and we have people in the service that are monitoring that in the background all the time. And like Peter mentioned, hey, someone can be checking in and seeing, is the camera working in this room? And if they're not, let's get ahead of it. We don't need to wait for someone to walk into that room and have a poor experience and find out that, hey, I wanted to do this meeting and the room wasn't working properly. No, let's get ahead of that and find out why. We can remotely reboot a room. We can do troubleshooting steps. We can notify someone and get someone in there to take a look. Is something unplugged? Is there an issue there that we can fix before anyone goes in there to actually use the space? So I think that's really exciting.
Just a question, because I'm not muted like everyone else, but is that something, Brandon, that you guys can, like, not only, obviously you guys are creating the dashboard, but can you guys also like flag it for us? Because no one here is going to watch a dashboard or check a dashboard if something's working.
Preach it, Brian. Preach it.
Is that the WM can kind of do that for us?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the concierge service. That's whether that is remote, if you're a small and medium business client, whether you're an enterprise client, doesn't matter. We have the team that's watching that when you're a managed service client, that's looking at those details and is going to flag them and bring them up to you and create relevant tickets and things of that nature to make sure that that's being proactively communicated.
And just to validate that, I monitor, I know it sounds lame, but I monitor the tickets that come through our system. And so I see tickets coming through saying, hey, camera in this room is down. A few minutes later, I'll see a ticket coming through saying it's resolved. So having that happen just on its own, Brian, I agree with you 100% is really the key. So.
All right. So we've got some back and forth happening already. Let's keep that going. I want to open this up to question and answer from those who've joined us. If you've got a question for a subject matter expert, obviously a question for one of our panel members. What we'll do is we'll put it in the chat. Just put your question in the chat, and then I think Josh is going to moderate that and look at it and just call on you, and I'll give you a chance to come off of mute and ask your question to one of the panel members. So we can get started with that, and we'll give it a couple minutes here for people to put their questions in the chat and get that started.
While people are doing that, one of the things I just want to sort of mention is, like, you know, from our perspective, going through a design and build of a new space, it's like we're like kind of techie people. Like, we like technology, but it's really what we've realized through the process is we really need help in terms of the actual like making sure the equipment that we're looking for and want is the right equipment. Then there's the actual procurement of it, the installation of it, and importantly, there's that service side of it too. So what we've sort of figured out by going through our own journey of teching our space out is that we can't just go and buy a bunch of I mean, we could, but it's probably not going to work. And so there's a real process. Like any project, construction project, this is its own scope, and it's an important one to seek help on.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that too with our own experience. You know, when we did exactly that, Brian, we attempted to do our own Microsoft Teams room in the beginning with the little knowledge we had, and it worked okay. But when we collaborated for the rest of the Teams rooms, that's what made the real difference for us, making sure we scoped each room out properly. Just the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, sorry, hogging the mic here because I don't see any questions coming up, but that's okay. Was the whole supportability. So, you know, I don't know if you've seen the QR codes. I think in one of the slides there was some QR codes. So one of the things, you know, in Westport is we're still in hybrid. Most of our staff still working from home, but the people that are in the office are the same people regularly. So they're the ones who, when they go into a Microsoft Teams room or one of our meeting rooms, they're the ones that need help. So these QR codes, even though we maybe haven't utilized them to a really big extent, I've done it myself where I've gone into a meeting room and the executive are having problems or whatever. And so I'll just scan the QR code, show them how it works. And then boom, next thing you know, we've got 2 or 3 people on Teams. We explain the problem. A lot of times it's Brad. He'll go into the back end, look at what's going on, help us resolve it. So that having that ability, I think Brian mentioned it earlier, is one of the things you don't want is have a meeting and then 20 minutes into the meeting, you're still trying to resolve the technology, right? So being able to go into a meeting room if you do have issues and being able to have somebody quickly help you resolve the issues is key.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point there, Peter, because I think the opportunity cost of meetings, not live meetings, especially if they're live and hybrid, it's so hard to get people together now, and they've become so valuable. You don't want to be wasting any of that valuable collaboration time trying to get the technology to work.
Yeah.
We've got a question in the chat here from Chris Fitzgerald. Does the managed service require guest admin access for an M365 Azure tenant?
That
Brandon,
sounds like a Brandon question.
Yeah, Brandon, do you mind speaking to that one for us, please?
Sure, I can jump on that. Yeah, we would be working closely with your security teams. You can create its own role, but there is going to need to be some access to get into that data, and specifically the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. So it's not necessarily full-blown admin, but we work closely to create an appropriate role depending on what your policies are to make sure that that's an appropriate level of data and access.
Great, thanks, Brandon. We've got another question here. I find my customers are concerned that they have already invested a lot in their rooms. How do you make the most out of these investments, and do you have any examples? Maybe I'll put that one to Brandon as well. But certainly, Peter, if you've got any experience on how you've leveraged previous investments into a new build out, feel free to chime in as well.
I'll pop in here right away. So yeah, we had some cases where we had already purchased things like TVs, right? In that case, for example, you can repurpose those with whether you're going with Logitech. We went with Logitech tap system. So for us, we were replacing 15-year-old technology with new technology. So we didn't have the same case, but in the case where we had made an investment in, say, things like TVs, we could keep those investments. But the tap system, obviously, if you're going to go with that, you need to purchase that. So.
Jody, I might hand off to you because I think this is a good opportunity to talk about a recent project we did with the Rough Riders there.
Yeah, so that is a good example. I mean, a few of the organizations we work with, in addition to the Rough Riders, have had existing technology, right? And I think that once we were able to talk to them about the level of support that we could get through managing those devices, it became like, this is something we want to do, but we've already invested in the equipment. So in that case, we continued to do the discovery. We went through our process, but really was about just leveraging what they already had and then put that under management. The consistency and standardization largely was around these being like Teams room systems. So because they were Teams, we were still able to manage them through the Teams admin center. We're still able to do a lot of that endpoint monitoring, but then also still be able to add the next level support in addition to the managed support and the IT folks, the power bar, and be able to help them out as well. So while they actually had already invested in equipment, they've actually got the QR codes all enabled. I went into the Piffles room not too long ago, tried out the QR code because I even like doing it. It's an interesting experience and be able to get the power bar right there on my phone. So that happened not only at the Riders, but Cameco as well had made some investments, and we were able to incorporate those investments into the managed service.
Great. Thanks for sharing that story, Jody. Well, it's actually a perfect lead into a follow-up message people will get in a week or two's time. We have a great riders video to share as far as their experience. We're hoping to have it ready for today. They've taken some much deserved rest after hosting the Grey Cup. So they've got the final copy in their hands, but we'll be getting it out so that we can kind of further share that experience that they've had recently. We've got another question here in the chat. So when we have an invite from an outside Teams invite, we find that the room can't accept the invite when it gets added to the meeting. For example, if the provincial government creates the meeting and invites us and we want to add the room and it fails.
So I can jump on that.
Well, Peter had his hand up first. We'll give it to Peter.
I just went through this. So this to me is brilliant. So yeah, I mean, if somebody else creates a Teams meeting, you can't invite a meeting room to that, obviously. So what you can do is you can book the meeting room. So if I get an invite, say from somebody external that has Teams, and I get this Teams invite, I can't necessarily forward it to the meeting room and have it or whatever. I can't do that. But what I can do is book the meeting room. When I go into the meeting room, I can go to the tap system and I can just enter the meeting ID and the passcode and everything comes up like it should. So that's the way I figured out how to do it, is entering the meeting ID and the passcode into the tap system, and you have your full system.
There is also in the Teams background, by default, the systems come with that ability for an outside domain to create meetings in your spaces is blocked. That's a security feature, and that's in there. You can override that in the background, but you do have to consider that aspect of it. So what Peter's mentioning is great. There are ways you can work around that while keeping the system secure, but it is possible to open that up with some configuration settings on the rooms themselves. But it's something you want to monitor and keep track of as well.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that, guys. We've got another question here. If there's any other questions out there, I'd ask you to get them into the chat. We'll do one last round after this because we're coming near the end of our time. But this is for the entire group. As Microsoft rolls out new updates and features to Teams, what are we doing to help user education and adoption on an ongoing basis? That seems like a Jody question to start, and then we'll pass it off if anybody else wants to speak to it.
Yeah. Well, so like if you keep up to date on all the new features coming out of Teams, it's a lot of fun for someone like me who likes all that new shiny stuff. Not only new features, but new licenses. There's actually an all new license for Teams as well that gives you the ability to do some premium features also. So the idea is that as an organization and service provider, we have to be knowledgeable on these things first. And then it's through those connections, interactions, and tickets. Times that you come to the Power Bar, we've had people come in and ask us, "Is this feature available?" And it's just not yet. 2 months later, Teams rolls out a feature, and guess what? We're calling you and saying that that feature is now available. So it's really our ability to not just resolve a problem, but get to know you, understand what you're trying to do, make sure those things are documented in a knowledge base, and then come back to you when there's new features that are outlined. So this is not a one and done. This is certainly a relationship that we're putting together, a service, and the onus on us, the accountability is on us to make sure that our customers know some of these features that are coming up that they could use. It's happened lots. It's kind of interesting when someone asks us for that, and Teams rolls it out like 2 months later.
Yeah, a really good example of that is when we first started our town halls 2 years ago. The translation functionality was new and just became new. So since then, when we do our town halls, they're all translated to Polish, to French, to Dutch, to Italian, and it works really well.
Yeah, that's it's amazing to see how far that technology's come. That's very, very cool to see. So we had a comment here around going back to the trying to add a meeting room to the meeting. A workaround that one of the attendees has used is that they copy the link as if it's a Zoom meeting and use it that way. That's been a workaround that's worked well for them. So thanks for sharing that. And thanks. We've had somebody add in a link to the latest Microsoft event, Ignite event, that outlines some of the latest available options in Teams. So great for anybody who wants to check that out. There's lots of great things in there for sure. Another question here: does anybody have experience with Teams in a VDI environment? Have you run into issues with Teams offloading to thin clients and not having enough resources for the Teams meeting? Brandon, any experience on your end?
No, I'd be happy to take that one offline and dig into it a little bit and follow up with some people and get back to you if you're interested in that.
Yeah, that seems like a great idea. We've got the person's contact info there. We can get back to them, find out if anybody in the organization has seen that, and hopefully be able to help them out. And one last question here. Sorry if I missed this. Do Teams room setup require a computer or complete standalone? And two, does it support Zoom meetings?
So that one is a bit of a tricky answer because it's yes, it requires a computer, but no, it doesn't require a computer. It's essentially an IoT device. The Logitech Tap, for example, is a computer, but it's not something that you manage or put on your environment necessarily. It's all a built-in device. So you're not adding an extra computer into the rack like we used to do 5 years ago. So it's all self-contained as its own device. So it has some computing in the background, so it can manage the devices, automatically turn things on and off. Obviously have the scheduling and Outlook tie-ins and everything there, but it's not its own separate piece.
And it does support Zoom meetings as well as WebEx, and others are being added. So yes, to that as well.
And then further to that question, how do you merge traditional on-prem content into cloud-first Teams meeting platforms? Example, accessing an application that is only available on-prem.
So that for us, we're an engineering group. So that's one of our primary things is we will have meetings with 15 engineers and they need to show their fancy tools. So the beauty of the Tap system is you can just go in there, take with your laptop, plug it into the Tap system and present. So whether that's sharing an application or a slide deck or whatever, it's really super easy to do.
Great. This has been fantastic. I appreciate everybody in the audience sending out their questions. Obviously, appreciate our guests and all of their knowledge to be able to help out. And this is what the panel discussions are all about. We want to bring our client community together. We want to learn together. We want to evolve our approach and use of technology together. So thank you to the audience. And thank you very much, Peter, Brian. It was great to have you join today. Really appreciate your stories and your insight. And yeah, have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too.